Growth never begins where comfort is fully intact. As long as a person remains in familiar spaces, surrounded by predictable routines, safe relationships, and unchallenging environments, true transformation is delayed. Familiarity creates a sense of control, and while control feels reassuring, it also limits expansion. You can only grow to the extent that you are willing to step beyond what you already know, what you have already mastered, and what no longer demands anything new from you. Remaining comfortable may preserve your current state, but it will never introduce you to your next level. Familiar spaces are deceptive because they feel productive even when they are not. You may be busy, active, and even applauded, yet still stagnant. When there is no demand for new thinking, no requirement for greater discipline, and no pressure to develop new capacity, growth is quietly suspended. What once stretched you may now be effortless, and effortlessness is often a sign that development has slowed. When everything around you affirms who you already are, nothing challenges who you could become. Leaving familiar territory is uncomfortable because it exposes weakness. The moment you step into new spaces, you are confronted with what you do not know, what you have not yet developed, and where you must improve. This exposure is humbling, and many avoid it because it threatens ego and self-image. Yet humility is a prerequisite for growth. You cannot learn if you already believe you know enough. You cannot evolve if you insist on environments that constantly reinforce your current identity. Every significant shift in life requires the courage to detach from what feels safe. Safe spaces rarely demand transformation. They allow habits to go unquestioned and limitations to remain unchallenged. Growth begins when you intentionally place yourself where you are stretched, where expectations are higher, and where comfort is no longer guaranteed. These environments may feel intimidating at first, but they are designed to awaken dormant potential and expand inner capacity. Familiarity also breeds dependency. When you remain in the same spaces for too long, you begin to rely on systems, people, and patterns that carry you instead of challenge you. Growth requires responsibility, and responsibility increases when support structures are reduced. This is why change often feels lonely. The familiar voices, routines, and reinforcements may no longer be present, forcing you to develop inner strength, discipline, and self-leadership. What feels like loss is often preparation. There is a season when what once served you becomes a limitation. Relationships, habits, environments, and even mindsets can expire without you realizing it. Growth demands discernment to recognize when it is time to move on. Holding on to familiar spaces beyond their purpose creates stagnation. Letting go does not mean those spaces were wrong. It means they have completed their assignment. Stepping out of comfort is not reckless. It is intentional. It is a conscious decision to prioritize future potential over present ease. The unfamiliar may feel unstable, but it is fertile ground for transformation. Every new level is hidden behind the discomfort of transition. When you choose to leave familiar spaces, you choose expansion, maturity, and progress. Growth will always ask you to move, stretch, and evolve, because staying where you are is the one place growth cannot occur. Discomfort is often misunderstood as a warning sign, something to avoid or escape, but in reality, it is frequently the clearest evidence that growth is happening. When change begins to take place within a person, it disrupts existing patterns, habits, and ways of thinking. That disruption creates tension, uncertainty, and emotional unease. This inner friction is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that old structures are being challenged to make room for something new. Whenever growth is authentic, it will be felt before it is celebrated. Transformation always involves stretching, and stretching is rarely comfortable. When your capacity is being expanded, you feel pressure because you are operating beyond what you have previously sustained. This is true in every area of life. Mentally, new ideas can feel overwhelming at first. Emotionally, greater maturity may require confronting unresolved issues. Spiritually, deeper alignment demands surrender and discipline. In each case, discomfort signals that you are crossing the boundaries of your former limitations. What feels unstable is often the process of recalibration. Many people retreat at the very point where progress is taking place. The unfamiliar sensations of discomfort are interpreted as danger, causing them to revert to old habits that feel safer. Yet safety and growth rarely coexist. If everything feels comfortable, predictable, and effortless, it often means that nothing new is being developed. Growth interrupts comfort because it requires reorganization. Just as a building must be shaken during renovation, a life must experience disturbance during transformation. Discomfort also exposes areas that require development. It highlights weaknesses, inconsistencies, and dependencies that comfort successfully hides. When you are stretched, what you lack becomes evident, not to shame you, but to guide you. Awareness precedes improvement. You cannot strengthen what you refuse to acknowledge. Discomfort acts as a mirror, revealing where focus, discipline, or refinement is needed. Without that revelation, growth remains shallow and incomplete. There is also a refining aspect to discomfort. It separates desire from commitment. Many want change in theory, but discomfort reveals who is willing to endure the process. Anyone can celebrate the idea of growth, but only the committed can remain when it becomes uncomfortable. That endurance builds resilience. It trains you to function under pressure, to think clearly in uncertainty, and to maintain integrity when emotions are unsettled. These qualities are not formed in ease. They are forged in challenge. Discomfort is temporary, but its results are lasting. The tension you feel during growth will not remain forever, but the strength it produces will. What is unfamiliar today becomes manageable tomorrow and mastered in time. Every level that once felt overwhelming eventually becomes your new normal. This is the pattern of progress. If you consistently avoid discomfort, you also avoid the opportunity to normalize higher levels of capacity and excellence. When interpreted correctly, discomfort becomes a guide rather than a threat. It points toward areas of expansion and signals alignment with growth. Instead of asking how to escape discomfort, the wiser question is, what is this discomfort trying to produce in me? When you learn to see discomfort as evidence of transformation, you stop running from it and begin to cooperate with the process. In doing so, you position yourself for genuine, sustainable growth. Resistance is rarely random. It often emerges at the precise moment when progress is closest, when a shift is about to occur, and when persistence is most needed. Many abandon their pursuit not because the vision was wrong, but because they misinterpreted resistance as a sign to stop rather than a signal to continue. The presence of resistance does not mean you are off course. More often it means you are pressing against the boundaries of limitation and nearing a breakthrough. Every level has a gate, and resistance is the guard at that gate. It tests resolve, clarity, and commitment. When you attempt to move beyond where you have always been, opposing forces arise. These forces may appear as internal doubt, fear, fatigue, or confusion. They may also appear externally through opposition, delay, misunderstanding, or discouragement. None of these are proof of failure. They are indicators that movement is occurring and that growth is being challenged to prove its authenticity. Resistance exposes the depth of desire. When everything flows easily, it is difficult to distinguish between interest and conviction. Resistance forces a decision. Will you continue when progress is slow? Will you remain consistent when affirmation is absent? Will you stand firm when the outcome is uncertain? These moments separate those who are casually involved from those who are truly committed. Elevation is not given to enthusiasm alone, but to endurance. It is important to understand that resistance intensifies near transition points. Just before a new level is accessed, old systems resist change. Patterns, habits, and even environments that benefited from your previous version push back against growth. This pushback can feel overwhelming, but it is a sign that you are disrupting the familiar order. Change is threatening to anything that thrives on stability, including your own comfort and routines. Many confuse resistance with rejection. They assume that difficulty means disqualification. In reality, resistance is often a requirement. It builds capacity for what lies ahead. If you cannot withstand the pressure of resistance, you will not be able to manage the responsibility of elevation. Strength is not granted at arrival. It is developed on the way. What you overcome on the path prepares you for what you must sustain at the destination. Resistance also sharpens focus. When distractions fall away and the path becomes narrow, clarity increases. You begin to understand why you started and what truly matters. This clarity is a gift that comfort rarely provides. In resistance, priorities are refined and motives are purified. What remains after resistance is what is strong enough to endure. Quitting at the point of resistance is one of the most costly mistakes a person can make. Often, the breakthrough is not far beyond the struggle. It is hidden within it. Those who endure do not do so because it is easy, but because they understand that resistance is temporary while the reward is lasting. What feels heavy now is not meant to crush you, but to build strength within you. When resistance arises, it is not a cue to retreat, but a call to press deeper. It is evidence that you are approaching change, standing at the edge of elevation, and being invited to rise above former limits. Endurance through resistance transforms struggle into growth and pressure into progress. Discipline and sacrifice are the silent foundations of every lasting form of growth. While inspiration may ignite the desire to change, it is discipline that sustains the journey when emotions fluctuate and motivation fades. Growth that depends only on excitement will collapse under pressure. But growth built on discipline develops stability and endurance. Discipline is the ability to choose what is necessary over what is comfortable. And that choice must be made repeatedly, often in moments when no one is watching and no immediate reward is visible. Sacrifice is inseparable from discipline because progress always requires trade-offs. To gain something new, something old must be released. Time, energy, habits, and even relationships may need to be reevaluated. This is not because they are inherently wrong, but because growth demands focus. You cannot carry every weight and still expect to move forward efficiently. Sacrifice creates space, and that space allows capacity to increase. What you remove intentionally determines what you can receive responsibly. Many people admire the results of growth without honoring the process that produced them. They see maturity, excellence, and impact, but they do not see the early mornings, the difficult decisions, the delayed gratification, and the moments of self-denial that made those results possible. Discipline is rarely dramatic. It is repetitive, quiet, and often uncelebrated. Yet over time, its cumulative effect becomes undeniable. Small, consistent decisions shape outcomes more powerfully than occasional bursts of effort. Sacrifice also trains priority. When you choose long-term development over short-term pleasure, you align your actions with your vision. Growth requires clarity about what matters most. Without that clarity, sacrifice feels like loss. With it, sacrifice becomes investment. What you give up today is not wasted. It is being converted into strength, skill, wisdom, and character that will serve you for years to come. Discipline protects growth from emotional instability. Feelings are unreliable indicators of readiness or commitment. There will be days when growth feels rewarding and days when it feels exhausting. Discipline ensures that progress continues regardless of emotional state. It anchors you to purpose rather than impulse. This consistency is what allows growth to move from intention to reality. Without discipline, even the most promising potential remains undeveloped. Sacrifice also exposes seriousness. Growth is costly, and the willingness to pay that cost reveals how deeply change is valued. When discomfort arises, sacrifice answers the question of whether growth is a preference or a priority. Those who are unwilling to give up convenience will eventually be constrained by limitation. Those who accept sacrifice gain access to greater capacity and freedom. Over time, discipline produces momentum. What once felt difficult becomes routine. What once required effort becomes instinctive. Sacrifice in the beginning leads to sustainability in the future. The habits you build through discipline eventually build you. Growth that starts with sacrifice ends with mastery. Discipline and sacrifice are not punishments, they are pathways. They shape character, sharpen focus, and strengthen resolve. Through them, growth moves beyond desire and becomes reality. Those who embrace discipline and sacrifice do not just grow temporarily. They develop the capacity to sustain growth for a lifetime. Every new level in life comes with new demands, and those demands require a corresponding shift in mindset, habits, and responsibility. Growth is not simply about doing more, it is about becoming more. If internal structures remain the same while external opportunities increase, imbalance occurs. This is why many struggle after advancement. The environment changes, but the inner framework does not. Sustainable growth requires alignment between who you are within and what you are called to handle. A new level begins in the mind. Before your life changes outwardly, your thinking must be upgraded inwardly. Old mindsets that once supported survival may hinder expansion. Limiting beliefs, fear-based decisions, and short-term thinking cannot sustain greater responsibility. Growth demands perspective, vision, and the ability to think beyond immediate gratification. Without mental renewal, opportunities feel overwhelming rather than empowering. Habits are the daily expressions of mindset. What you repeatedly do reveals what you truly believe. New levels require new routines because old habits were designed for previous capacities. Increased responsibility cannot be managed with inconsistent discipline or unmanaged time. Growth demands structure. This includes how you manage your energy, how you respond to pressure, and how you steward resources. Habits either prepare you for advancement or expose you to failure once advancement comes. Responsibility increases with growth. Higher levels require greater accountability, decision-making, and influence. Responsibility is the weight of impact, and without preparation, that weight becomes burdensome. Growth is not just about elevation, it is about readiness. You may desire more, but you must also be able to sustain more. Responsibility tests maturity. It requires integrity, self-control, and consistency. These qualities are developed intentionally, not accidentally. Resistance to new levels often comes from attachment to old versions of self. Familiar behaviors and thought patterns feel safe even when they are limiting. But growth demands release. You cannot operate with the same emotional responses, communication patterns, and priorities and expect different outcomes. What brought you here will not take you there. Transition requires willingness to unlearn as much as to learn. New levels also expose blind spots. Increased capacity reveals areas that were previously hidden or irrelevant. Growth magnifies both strength and weakness. This exposure is not to discourage, but to refine. Awareness creates opportunity for correction and development. Those who embrace feedback and adjust accordingly continue to rise. Those who resist change stagnate, regardless of opportunity. Responsibility is not meant to intimidate, it is meant to refine. When embraced properly, it strengthens leadership, sharpens judgment, and deepens character. Growth that includes responsibility produces stability and impact. Growth without responsibility produces collapse. This is why preparation is as important as promotion. New levels are not sustained by ambition alone, but by alignment. When mindset, habits, and responsibility are intentionally developed, growth becomes manageable and rewarding. The goal is not merely to arrive at a new level, but to remain effective there. True growth ensures that when opportunity expands, capacity is already prepared to meet it. Pain is an unavoidable part of the human experience, but it does not have to be a wasted one. When pain is interpreted without purpose, it becomes a burden that breeds bitterness, resentment, and fear. But when pain is understood through the lens of growth, it becomes a powerful teacher. It carries lessons that comfort can never communicate and insights that ease would never reveal. Growth often speaks in the language of pain because pain has the ability to command attention and provoke change. Pain forces reflection. In moments of ease, people rarely stop to evaluate their lives deeply. Comfort dulls awareness, but pain sharpens it. When something hurts, you ask questions. You begin to examine choices, patterns, and assumptions. This examination is not meant to condemn, but to correct. Pain exposes areas that require adjustment and invites introspection that leads to wisdom. Without this confrontation, harmful cycles often continue unnoticed. Pain also teaches humility. It reminds you of limitation and dependence. When strength fails and answers are unclear, ego is stripped away, creating space for learning. Humility opens the door to growth because it allows instruction, correction, and guidance. A person who has never been broken remains unteachable. Pain softens pride and prepares the heart to receive truth that would otherwise be resisted. There is also a refining aspect to pain. It removes what is superficial and strengthens what is essential. Under pressure, priorities become clear. What truly matters remains, while what is unnecessary fades. Pain simplifies life by stripping away distractions and revealing core values. In this way, pain becomes a clarifier, helping you realign with purpose and intention. Pain teaches endurance. It stretches emotional and mental capacity, training you to remain steady under pressure. Endurance is not learned in moments of ease, but in seasons of difficulty. Through pain, resilience is developed. And resilience is necessary for long-term growth. Those who avoid pain often lack stamina, while those who endure it with purpose develop strength that carries them through future challenges. When pain is interpreted correctly, it also builds compassion. Having experienced difficulty, you gain sensitivity to the struggles of others. This awareness deepens empathy and emotional intelligence. Growth is not only about personal advancement, it is also about relational maturity. Pain expands the heart, enabling understanding and connection that cannot be learned theoretically. Pain is not meant to define identity, but to inform development. It is a season, not a destination. When you learn from pain rather than dwell in it, you extract value from adversity. The goal is not to glorify pain, but to redeem it. What once threatened to weaken you becomes a source of insight and strength. Purpose gives pain direction. Without purpose, pain feels random and cruel. With purpose, it becomes meaningful. Growth occurs when you ask not why this happened to me, but what is this producing in me? That shift transforms pain from an enemy into an instructor. When pain is interpreted with purpose, it no longer destroys. It develops, strengthens, and prepares you for greater capacity ahead. Avoiding discomfort may feel like self-preservation, but over time it becomes self-sabotage. When a person consistently chooses ease over challenge, they unknowingly choose stagnation. Growth is progressive by nature, And when progress is resisted, potential is slowly buried beneath routine and familiarity. Nothing may seem wrong on the surface, yet beneath that calm exterior, capacity is shrinking and momentum is fading. The tragedy of avoiding discomfort is not immediate failure, but gradual decline. Stagnation rarely announces itself loudly. It settles quietly through repetition without improvement. The same patterns are rehearsed, the same conversations repeated, and the same results recycled. Because there is no crisis, there is no urgency to change. This is why stagnation is more dangerous than struggle. Struggle provokes action, but comfort sedates ambition. When discomfort is avoided, growth opportunities are ignored, and potential remains unused. Every individual carries dormant abilities that require challenge to awaken. These abilities do not emerge in ease. They respond to pressure, responsibility, and demand. When discomfort is consistently avoided, those abilities remain undeveloped. Over time, unused potential does not remain neutral. It diminishes, skills weaken, courage erodes, and confidence declines. What could have been built through challenge is lost through neglect. Avoiding discomfort also narrows perspective. When life is structured around staying comfortable, decision-making becomes fear-driven. Opportunities are evaluated based on risk rather than purpose. This mindset limits exploration and innovation. Growth requires experimentation, and experimentation involves uncertainty. When uncertainty is avoided, creativity is suppressed and progress stalls. Life becomes predictable but unfulfilled. There is also an emotional cost to stagnation. Deep within, there is an awareness of unrealized potential. This awareness often manifests as frustration, restlessness, or dissatisfaction. Many misinterpret these feelings as external problems, when in reality, they are internal signals calling for growth. Avoiding discomfort does not eliminate these signals, it intensifies them. The soul was not designed for stagnation, and it resists confinement. Wasted potential is one of the greatest losses a person can experience. It is not measured in visible failure, but in invisible regret. Looking back and realizing that fear, convenience, or comfort dictated choices can be more painful than any struggle endured. Discomfort, though challenging, carries the promise of progress. Stagnation carries the certainty of regret. Avoidance also weakens resilience. When discomfort is continually escaped, tolerance for challenge decreases. Small obstacles feel overwhelming because the capacity to endure has not been developed. Growth requires strength, and strength is built through resistance. Without it, life becomes increasingly difficult, not because challenges increase, but because endurance decreases. Discomfort is the gateway to expansion. Avoiding it may preserve ease temporarily, but it sacrifices growth permanently. Those who choose challenge, even when it is uncomfortable, build lives marked by progress, depth, and fulfillment. Those who avoid it remain confined to what is familiar, never discovering what they were truly capable of becoming.